1, 2, 3, test Medietilsynet. 1, 2, 3, test Medietilsynet. En, to, tre, test Medietilsynet, høyre lyd. 1, 2, 3, test Medietilsynet, høyre lyd.
Men det sentralt?
So we would like to have the audience closer to here instead of spreading out in the room. So if you could all move down. There are reserved seats here for the EXCO members, the second row, and the rest of you, if you can just fill up the free seats. Thank you. And also those of you following us online. Welcome to what I believe will be an important and interesting conversation here today. I would like to start it all off with this.
Hva vår største trussel? Kanskje det atomkrig? Nei. Tenk deg om nå. Ok, hva med global oppvarming? Nei, absolutt ikke. Vår største trussel. At aksjen stuper? Ja, tampen brenner. Kom igjen, vi skal vokse. Vi skal bli rikere. Ja. Og hva vår største trussel mot det? Søvn. Hæ? Søvn! Men jeg liker å sove, jeg. Ikke din søvn. Brukerne våre søvn. De sover jo 8 timer om de får lov. Og hva gjør de ikke da? Spiser. Da bruker de ikke våre tjenester. 1/3 av døgnet. Og hva det en trussel mot? At vi tjener penger. Yes! Din velfortjente rikdom! Du må ikke sove! Nettopp!
Hører dere, folkens? Lag fete tjenester som gjør det grisevanskelig for folk å sove.
Sir! Yes, sir!
Remember, fight the sleep.
Fight the sleep! Fight the sleep!
Omtrent sånn det. Noen jobber mye for at du skal scrolle mer.
Fjo, nå føler jeg meg rik igjen.
So this was a part of a campaign recently run by the Norwegian Media Authority towards the younger generation. And we will get back to these issues throughout this afternoon. My name is Mari Welsand. I am the Director General of the Norwegian Media Authority. And we are proud to host this conference together with the European Audiovisual Observatory. Norway holds the presidency of the observatory this year. And we have used this opportunity to put a topic that is close to our hearts on the agenda. How do we protect children and young people online without closing the open democratic spaces that we all depend on. Let me start with a number that stays with me. 9 out of 10 Norwegian 9 and 10-year-olds are already on the mobile phone. They have their own mobile phone. And half of them also are on social media. These are not teenagers, they are primary school children. And the digital world they navigate in is not designed with them in mind. We know that the online space offers real value, connection, creativity, participation. But we also know the risks are real, and they should not be underestimated. Across Europe, this conversation is gaining urgency. New EU regulation is addressing online safety, and several countries, including Norway, are debating whether to raise age limits on social media. And alongside regulation, media literacy and education remain essential tools for building resilience in young people. But the question that sits at the heart of all this, and the one I hope that we will wrestle with today, is the one of balance. Children have a right to freedom of expression and to participate in public life. But they also have a right to be protected. Holding both of those rights at once is not easy. It requires exactly the kind of exchange that this conference is designed to enable. And I'm very pleased that the European Audiovisual Observatory brings both research depth and a pan-European perspective to this work. And it's now my pleasure to hand the floor to the Acting Executive Director, Maja Capello.
Thank you, Mari, and it's a pleasure also for us to co-welcome you all to this Norwegian presidency conference 20 years after last time Norway had the presidency. It was in 2006. Så tusen takk, Mari, for varm velkomst. Vi glad for å være her. And I would also like to thank for the topic. I will explain you a little bit how this works. But before that, let me just tell you that we have come from Strasbourg. The European Audiovisual Observatory is part of the Council of Europe. And every year we rotate the presidency. It's up to our countries to candidate, and we were very happy to welcome Norway when they proposed to have it here. And with the presidency package, there is also the organization of a conference, which is an opportunity to discuss together on topics that are on the priority for the host country. We have our official meeting tomorrow with the members of our Executive Council. I see many of them here today. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining. Also for you watching us online. And it is a particularly welcome topic this year about protection of young people online, because it's a topic that is not new, certainly. It's been discussed over and over again, so it's certainly not new. But it is new, nevertheless, because the first time this was handled at European level, it was in 1989 with the so-called Television Without Frontiers Directive. But at the time, it was about individual harms. It was about the contact of individual minors with exposure to harmful content on television. Today, it's a completely different story. We are talking about a variety of sources that minors encounter online, not always even willingly. So things have changed a lot. Today it's more about managing risk, distributing responsibility, and of course also protecting while ensuring a safe space. And the aim of this conference is to discuss a bit the regulatory challenges on how governments, regulators, lawmakers, policymakers, stakeholders, all actors involved manage to balance these two needs, to protect the minors online while at the same time empower them. So we will discuss issues like how rules can be enforced in an effective and proportionate manner, and also pointing to the fact that even if we have the EU trying to give a common approach on most aspects, on this, there are many national initiatives that are exploding right now. So we are going to look into fragmentation, harmonization, how does this look in practice, and how does a meaningful protection look like with regard to the balancing with their rights. But let's get slowly started. We will have two panels. We will discuss enforcement and empowerment, and we will start with enforcement across Europe with two presentations. And it's my pleasure to call Sophie Vallet from the European Audiovisual Observatory, she is the deputy head of legal department, to give us an introductory presentation of the legal mosaic that exists out there on this topic. Sophie, the floor is yours.
Good morning, everyone. So as concerns about digital risks to youth take central stage across Europe and beyond, it's more important than ever to address how we protect young people online. So thank you very much for being so numerous today to engage in such a crucial conversation. So we will see in the next 10 minutes or so the evolving regulatory landscape for platforms, as well as some insight into some enforcement cases that's starting to appear, and also discuss about possible holistic approach. So we are at a decisive moment, as it has been mentioned, in how we govern the digital environment for minors. Across Europe and beyond, there is now a shared recognition that the online world is everything but neutral. It shapes behaviors, exposure, and risk, which means protecting minors requires active, deliberate intervention. At the same time, a key challenge remains: how do we strengthen protection without compromising openness, innovation, and fundamental rights? The challenge becomes even more complex when we look at today's media landscape. Video sharing platforms have become central players in how content is distributed and accessed, from entertainment to news. And these platforms play a major role in what minors are exposed to. So where do we stand legally? Under the revised Audiovisual Media Services Directive, video sharing platforms are specifically addressed in Article 28A and B. And more specifically in the Article 28B3, there is an obligation for member states to ensure that video sharing platforms under their jurisdiction take measures to protect minors from the most harmful content by the strictest access control measures, including age verification and parental control systems. So, in Europe, we have also a broad and increasingly sophisticated regulatory toolbox to govern the digital environment and to protect the minors online. But this framework is also becoming more complex. So at the core of it, there is the Digital Services Act, the DSA, which introduced an horizontal system of risk management for online platforms. It explicitly requires platforms to assess and mitigate systemic risks, including those that may affect minors, such as exposure to harmful content or manipulative design. Alongside, the Artificial Intelligence Act, the AI Act, addresses the growing role of AI systems in shaping online experiences. This is particularly relevant for recommender systems and profiling tools, which can significantly influence what content users, including children, see and engage with. Then we have, as I mentioned, the Audiovisual Media Services Directive, which remains the foundational instrument, setting long-standing rules for the protection of minors from harmful content across both traditional and online services. More recently, emerging consumer protection initiatives, such as the proposed Digital Fairness Act, aim to address issues like dark patterns, addictive design, and other unfair commercial practices that can disproportionately affect young users. However, this regulatory expansion also raises an important tension, as was highlighted by Mari, how measures designed to protect minors operate within a broader framework of fundamental rights, including children's rights. In particular, the right to freedom of expression includes also the right to receive and impart information and ideas. And this was set already by the Council of Europe in the European Convention on Human Rights in Article 10, also in the EU with the Charter on Fundamental Rights, and more recently, the EMFA also provides on this right to have access to a plurality of editorially independent media content. So, taken together, these instruments reflect a clear shift in the EU regulatory approach from regulating content alone to requiring a broader systematic responsibility from platforms. Now, beyond the development of rules, the focus is shifting towards implementation in practice, with regulators actively using their enforcement powers. We are entering a new phase where enforcement is no longer theoretical but operational and visible. This is already visible in a series of high-profile cases and investigation, and to just cite a few, and maybe you will discuss it with the experts a bit later, we have seen in the Netherlands the Roblox case, where the Dutch Authority for Consumers and Markets launched an investigation on child safety and age-appropriate access measures for an online game platform. In the UK, we have seen also the case of OnlyFans with the regulatory scrutiny, in particular around age verification and preventing under 18s the access to adult content. And this resulted in a fine of more than £1 million imposed by Ofcom. Then at European Commission level, proceedings were opened against Meta under the Digital Services Act for failing to identify, assess and mitigate the risks of minors under 13s accessing their services. So taken together, these developments show that compliance is no longer abstract. It is being tested in real time through regulatory and judicial processes across jurisdictions. Let's now have a look at national level. There is also, as was mentioned by Maya, a growing momentum at national level. Across member states, many governments are considering restrictions on access to social media for minors below a certain age. In France and Portugal, and very recently in Sweden, these discussions have already progressed into a draft legislative proposal. And similar debates are also taking place just outside the EU, in Norway. Also, a bit further away in Turkey, a law was just adopted banning social media for children under 15. If we look further afield, Australia stands out as the only country that has already implemented such legislation. And we will see in a moment an early real-world feedback of how it works in practice with the e-safety commissioner from Australia. Beyond Europe and Australia, a range of countries are also exploring or proposing comparable restrictions, reflecting a broader global trend and concern towards stricter age-based access rules online. What we look at when we look a bit closer, we see that, however, there is quite some variation in how countries approach the age threshold for access to social media. In some proposals in the EU, the range is between 14 and 16 years old. If we look at global level, we see it can come from 13 years old until even 18 years old in some cases. So there is quite a variation at national level on how to approach these age thresholds. It's something that has not been decided in many countries yet or is under discussion. So what does it mean? These initiatives reflect legitimate societal concerns about the protection of minors online. However, they also point to a growing risk, regulatory fragmentation across jurisdictions. As different countries adopt different approaches, a patchwork of national rules is emerging. This fragmentation may undermine both the effectiveness of regulation, especially in relation to a question which is precisely cross-border, and it also can have an impact on legal certainty for platforms operating across borders. So the key question seems to be now no longer what rules exist, but how do we make them work in practice? Both the European Commission and the Council of Europe have issued guidance to support this shift from legislation to implementation. These instruments are designed to support consistent implementation across countries and to help translate broad regulatory principles into concrete operational standards that can be applied by platforms and regulators alike. In conclusion, I would say that regulation alone does not seem to be sufficient. There is a growing consensus that protecting minors online requires a broader, more holistic approach. This means not only creating a safer digital environment through legal frameworks, but also strengthening key capabilities such as media literacy, critical thinking, and user empowerment, especially for children and young people. And this will be precisely discussed later today. So the key shift is therefore moving from a model focused purely on protecting users to one that also enables them to understand, navigate, and manage online risk more effectively. So on the paper, it seems easy, and I'm conscious that it's not the case in practice, so I leave it to the experts to show us why it's so complicated. Thank you very much, and have a good discussion.
Thank you very much, Sophie, for this overview. And let's now turn around the globe and discover how it's going at the antipodes. As you know, Australia is the very first country where a social media ban has been introduced, and we will have now a video recording from Australia's e-safety commissioner, Julie Inman-Grant.
Ladies and gentlemen, my thanks to the European Audiovisual Observatory for the opportunity to address our European partners via this recorded video. In March of this year, I had the privilege of hearing President von der Leyen address the Australian Parliament, saying that it is we, parents, who must raise our children and not predatory addictive algorithms. Australia's example is one for us all. So I'm so pleased today that I'll share some of our experience implementing the world's first social media minimum age legislation. I'm also so pleased that the President has clearly understood our positioning around this as a social media delay, rather than as an absolute ban, but also that this is not about restricting children's access to social media, but rather minimizing social media's access to our children. Given these synergies, I thought I'd touch on where it sits within Australia's broader online safety framework. Because online ecosystems are complex and no single solution can ever make them safe, which is why in Australia we take a holistic approach. When e-safety began in 2015, we were the first dedicated independent online safety regulator in the world. There was no playbook, so we developed our own based on 3 pillars. The first is prevention, preventing online harms through our digital literacy resources and programs. The second is protection. We shield Australians and remediate harm through our 4 complaint schemes that allow Australians to report illegal, abusive, or seriously harmful material. The third pillar is proactive and systemic change. This includes our Safety by Design initiative and our systemic regulatory powers designed to change the online landscape from within. Over the past 2 years, for example, we've implemented enforceable industry codes and standards, establishing clear obligations for companies up and down the stack, from app stores to search engines, devices, and AI chatbots and companions. Our approach to social media minimum age straddles all 3 of these pillars, so I'll explain how they work together. Australia's minimum age is set at 16, and the focus is on preventing children under that age from having or holding accounts on age-restricted social media platforms. It's designed to delay children's exposure to invisible yet corrosive, deceptive, and harmful design features, like opaque recommender systems, endless scroll, snap streaks, constant notifications, and disappearing content. But there are exemptions in the legislation for gaming and messaging sites, and some services can be accessed in a logged-out state. That's where our codes and standards come in, because they do cover that broader online environment, requiring the tech sector to detect, prevent, and deter a range of online harms. Our complaint schemes serve as a backstop when platform content moderation schemes fail, and our digital literacy programs help prepare young people for life after they turn 16. So, what was our experience of implementing the social media minimum age taught us thus far? To begin with, I think everyone needs to be clear-eyed about what this regulation is asking platforms to do, to cut off a lucrative pipeline of revenue now and into the future. This means that the social media companies are not incentivized to flawlessly comply. Even so, initial signs after the legislation took effect on December 10th last year were encouraging. The 10 major platforms we assessed as age-restricted told us that they had deactivated or restricted around 5 million underage accounts in the first 6 weeks. To put that in perspective, there are approximately 2.2 million children between the ages of 10 and 16 in Australia. But these figures were point in time, which cannot tell the whole story. Since January, results have been mixed. On the positive side, by March, our research showed that there had been a 37% reduction in the number of under-16s holding accounts. Other research and anecdotal reports suggest that parents are having more constructive conversations with their children about online risks and social media use. Still, on the negative side, data obtained by eSafety from a range of sources has raised significant concerns about the true level of compliance by Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, and YouTube. As a result, I announced on the 31st of March that eSafety was moving from a compliance focus to an active enforcement stance. In doing so, I made clear that eSafety would not hesitate to seek court-ordered penalties of up to 30 million euros for systemic failure to comply with the law. Since March, we have seen some improvements addressing specific issues we raised. By necessity, our investigations are ongoing, and our compliance and safety uplift work continues. We expect to make decisions about any enforcement action in the not-too-distant future. So for other countries, I think one of the key lessons from Australia's experience so far is that this is a complex reform and it will take time to play out. Social media platforms do not have any incentive for it to be successful, and of course, teenagers will always try and get around any restrictions that are placed on them. Nevertheless, we are already seeing clear progress. So ultimately, I think the key lesson is this. Australia's experience has shown that a minimum age for social media is not only desirable in theory, it's also achievable in practice. But I also know one thing. We can go faster alone, but we can go further together, and we look forward to seeing what the European Union brings in this space. Thank you.
That was an enlightening testimonial of not only how things go well, but also reflection that can certainly be useful for us too. So now we will dive into the first panel discussion, which will try to link legislation with implementation. We have heard about the legislative toolbox in Europe, we have heard about Australia, and now one of the main questions that we should ask ourselves is how can we ensure that the rules that are designed to protect minors effectively lead to a safe online environment? Because having the rules is only the first step. Then in the end, their efficiency comes down to how they are enforced. And in addition to a proper implementation of the rules, we must also ensure that minors are put in the condition to ensure their rights. So in short, how do we have a public sphere that is both open and safe for young people? We will get into the right mood with a little video that I invite you to take a look at. before we dive into the
Hjernen har jo dopamin, og så det mye spennende på TikTok, så da har man veldig lyst til å åpne igjen for å få nye morsomme videoer.
Man vet aldri hva man kan få, så da vil man jo sjekke det på om igjen.
Jeg tror det liksom noe med algoritmen og hva du får opp, og at de liksom veldig gode på liksom bare holde deg gående til å scrolle helt til du liksom ikke orker mer, holdt på å si.
That's how it goes. And let's now see how this difficult balancing act goes with our distinguished speakers. And I would like to call Rowena Burke, Head of International Content Policy at Ofcom, the UK Media Authority, Nils Fischer-Kerain, Assistant Director at the Commissionen Mean, the Irish Media Authority, and Inge Velbergen, Senior Legal Officer at the Dutch Ministry of Education, Culture and Science. Thank you to all three of you for being here. You represent different bodies, different countries, but there is a common ground between all three of you. You care about minors. You care about how this online space can be made safe. And I would like to start with a question to Rowena and Inge, because I know that you have your views also supported by research on social media bans. We have seen they are popping up a little bit like mushrooms everywhere now. But is this a good or a bad idea? Let's just put that straight. And what does research say? Maybe, Rowena, you want to start?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, very simple question, Maya, to get us started with. Look, I think, as we've heard already from today, protecting children online is a shared objective of everyone, kind of around the world. And what's been interesting with the debate is, can we still achieve that shared objective whilst not restricting children's access to platforms and not restricting their rights to information, to expression, to participation? Yes, so in the UK government has recently closed a consultation exactly on this topic. It got, I think the latest figures are over 90,000 replies, which is substantial.
Massive.
Quite a lot of strength of feeling. And look, it's ultimately a question for government rather than for Ofcom. But as you say, Maya, we draw on a lot of our regulatory experience and probably have some reflections on it. So I think the first reflection from our perspective is, who is it who's making the decision? How are we ensuring that children's voices are heard and their perspectives are shared? So we published some research a couple of weeks ago. There we are, excellent. So everyone missed the answer that I said, that yes or no, it shouldn't be that. Yes, so we published some research in the UK a couple of weeks ago, which is part of our regular research publications about children's experiences online. And we found from that 98% of children in the UK, aged 18 to 17, go online. So how are we making sure that children's voices and perspectives are part of this debate? Ofcom is an evidence-based regulator, so unsurprisingly, we're interested in what the evidence actually tells us. So are we in a position to have the evidence to be able to make a decision, like should there be a ban or a delay? And we just heard from Julie, and obviously everybody's looking to Australia to learn from their experiences there. And as regulators, we can't think about policy without thinking about implementation, right? So that raises a whole other number of issues. So if you just think about a social media ban or delay, don't tell Julie, are we clear on what we mean by social media? So we know that social media platforms and feeds are often a pathway to harm. But there's also real risks like grooming that happen on video gaming platforms. So should they also be in scope? And what about other apps that are also addictive for children? Should they be in scope as well?
I guess it helps being a convergent regulator.
Yes, definitely. And to have that broad view, again, a theme that we've heard already today is this holistic approach, which I think is essential. And then just the last reflection, if you allow me, Maya, is just about the unintended consequences. So again, the research that we published recently shows that 64% of 8 to 17-year-olds told us that being online is good for their well-being. we might have opinions on that ourselves, and parents and carers in the room might have opinions, but they're telling us that they go there to relax, to create, and it's part of their identity building. What's the consequences if that access to platforms are taken away? I think lastly, what might be the impact on platforms themselves? So we know that some platforms have put protections in place already. If we say, do you know what, actually children aren't going to be here anymore, what might happen to those restrictions? Might we actually see a bit of a rollback?
That was a bit also what we heard from Australia, that they might then jump to something else.
Yes,
no?
Very much.
And do you share this viewing? What does research say in the Netherlands? And what is your approach? You are from the government, so it's a different kind of perspective. And you work also a lot with industry.
Yes, we do. And I'm afraid I cannot tell a lot about the research because that's done by different institutions in the Netherlands. And it's not only my ministry responsible, it's a couple of ministries who are responsible for this topic. However, we have I think it's just over 100 days, a new government in place, and they drafted a coalition agreement. And there it states that the Netherlands wants to contribute constructively and practically to a strong European agenda for the protection of minors. The digital world holds incredible opportunities, but we also know that it comes with great risks, especially for young users. And I think we already saw it in the presentation by Sophie, that different countries in Europe have a different approach. And the Netherlands would prefer to have an enforceable European-wide minimum age of 15 years for social media, with privacy-friendly age verification, on which the Commission has been working, as long as social media is not adequately safe. So, and I really liked the comments that the e-commissioner made at the end, that we can go faster alone, but we can go further together. So I think we need to find a European approach and not that every member state has its own age limit.
Absolutely. And we have seen also that there are a variety of age limits. So I wanted now to go to you, Nils. What do you think this could lead to a fragmentation in Europe if everyone goes its way? Is there a need to work together on this? Or and also, how does it help to collaborate? It's a bit following up on this tone on working together brings further. I think that can indeed lead us also in our discussion.
And thank you for having me here today. I think regulatory fragmentation, I think, is something that we all want to avoid. I think it's in the benefit of no one, whether it's the platforms providers, the children, the regulators, the policymakers, the politicians. Regulatory fragmentation is something that we all definitely want to avoid. And I think everyone in the room here can agree that kids need to be safe online. We need to do more. They're not safe enough, and exactly more needs to be done, and more needs to be done faster. Commissioner Mann, as kind of the regulator in Ireland, dealing and also as the digital service coordinator, as you can imagine, we've been talking about this quite a bit, not only internally, but crucially as well with our European colleagues through the various forums. And the way we see it there's kind of basically three options that we can take. We implement the current framework as it is. We strengthen the regulatory framework that it is. We have so many the framework is already quite dense as it is, as we saw from Sophie's presentation. Do we want to strengthen that even more using the DSA, AVMSD, etc., or do we want to try that alternative approach that we've seen that our colleagues in Australia are doing, that many of our European colleagues are doing, and crucially as well, it's also something that our own government is talking about. As regulators, as Rowena mentioned, we can't take a position. We don't want to take a position on this, but we do recognise that we are an independent media regulator. We are an interlocutor in these conversations, and so this is something that we need to talk about quite a bit. And to do that, we've had kind of 4 questions we've asked ourselves as an organisation. That's one: is a ban or a delay, however we want to call it, is it appropriate? Looking at that balance of rights versus risks, is it appropriate? Secondly, is it feasible? Will this actually work? We've seen from our colleagues here in Australia, it could be working, but it might not also be working. So that, that's a question we really need to ask ourselves. The third one, which is crucial for us as regulators, is enforceability. Would these measures actually work? How would we hold platforms and accountable. And I think that's a crucial question there, going back to what I mentioned about those 3 options. Have we adequately used the tools that we have already? We have a lot of tools as regulators and enforcement. Have we used them adequately enough before we start adding more to them? And fourthly, the effectiveness. Is this ultimately the safest way to protect children? That's a crucial question that we want to ask. So I think it's, politicians and the media love to have a binary choice, yes or no, ban, yes or no. Of course, as policymakers know that it's a lot more difficult than that. And I think what's crucial to mention is, back to your question about regulatory fragmentation, we saw from the presentation, no one is clear on the definitions here. Is it what is social media? What classifies social media? And crucially, what age should we even be talking about? Countries are talking about 13, others are talking about 16. Some are talking about date of birth, some are talking about the year of birth. I think before we even start talking about that, we need to kind of clarify, make sure we're having the same conversation.
And in this conversation, Ireland is actually quite special. I mean, you happen to be the country of jurisdiction of most tech companies, so the super regulator of everybody, let's say. How does this feel? I mean, how is your workload? Is it something completely massive, unbearable? Do people trust you? How is this perceived?
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. That's why I was so keen to come to Oslo. I was keen to escape all the workload. No, it's a very good question. And just for context, Commissioner Mann is only, as an organisation, we're only 3.5 years old. Prior to that, we were the Broadcasting Authority of Ireland. And to give you a kind of sense of the scale and the workload that's increased, 3.5 years ago, we were 50 people. We're now more than 300. So that shows you in the space of every 6 months, we're kind of adding 50 more people as it currently stands. And we're actually in discussions with our government to get even more because we know there's more responsibilities coming through the AI Act. So we recognise that there's a lot that we have to do, that they're given the country of origin principle and how important that is as a cornerstone to the EU single market. There's a lot that we need to do. So we recognise that we need to have that resourcing in place. But we know, of course, that's not just an issue for us. This is an issue facing all media regulators and other competent authorities. It's an issue for the Commission, of course, as well. Workload and resourcing is crucial. And that's why, we really believe that cooperation is key. And not only cooperating with our colleagues in the Commission, but crucially also with all other networks. We're members of the European Media Board, we're members of the DSA Board, where we work with all 27 other regulators. We also work on the Global Online Safety Regulators Network with Rowena and her colleagues. So we're doing a lot in terms of cooperation and kind of making sure that we do a lot. And the one thing I want to add as well to that is where cooperation and workloading and resourcing is key is not only cooperation between regulators of other member states, but crucially cooperation between regulators. We work very closely with our Data Protection Commission, with our communications regulator, with the Consumer Protection Authority. We work very closely with them, so kind of having the resourcing to kind of work not only internationally, but crucially internally as well is imperative for effective regulation as we see it.
And now we have touched only about on one side, now the companies that you have jurisdiction for. But then you have the users, and here is the cross-border effect of the online safety. And I want now to just take as an example the Netherlands. What happens, for example, with users based in Netherlands, and how do you see the balance between the legislative regulation that is adopted in Ireland and your rules protecting the users? For example, age rating. When you upload content on social media, they are rated locally according to your Dutch rules. How does this work, and do you have any best practices that you could recommend?
Yes, thank you, Maya. Well, indeed, while Ireland is the regulator for the platforms, we from the Netherlands are the regulator for the creators based in the Netherlands. So based on our media law, which is based on the AVMSD, of course, all audiovisual content that could possibly harm persons younger than 16 years old, that needs to be classified according to the kijkwijzer. I think that's a well-known Dutch word in this group. So it doesn't matter where the platform is based, but it matters where the content creator is based. The system works, but it works as long as the platforms provide the proper tools for the content creators to add the right classification to their content. And for the moment, for example, I only know the example of YouTube. If you want to upload a video, then you can only add a classification by branding it in your video. So if you made a mistake in this classification, it should be another classification, then you should take offline your video and post it again. And I'm not a content creator, but I've been told that this is really terrible for your views because your views drop to 0 and you're old already before you uploaded it again. So,
and when you say content creator, you mean influencers, right?
Influencers, yeah.
Just to make that clear to the audience, yeah. So they
Yeah.
are not happy to lose their followers.
No. And you also asked for best practice. Well, it's not a current best practice, but we hope to get a best practice because our organization who works with the Kijkwijzer, NICAM, they are working currently on a digital Kijkwijzer, which will be on the platform. So not on the content on the platform, but on the platform itself. And hopefully this will help parents, caregivers and young people to gain better insight into the risks of social media and video platforms, not only in terms of content, but also in terms of design and usage, with reliable, scientifically grounded information and clear guidance for action. So this should be a real tool for parents and for children to see what kind of content can I see on this platform. Is it safe for me to go to this platform? How are the settings? How's the algorithm organized? Things like that. So to really give like a guidance to parents and to children on video.
But this is not
platforms.
operational yet.
It's
right?
not operational yet, but they're working really hard on it.
Very good.
Yeah.
We look forward to it. Let's now move outside of the EU to the UK. We have talked about the DSA. You have a cousin of the DSA, no? The Online Safety Act. We did not talk about it in the presentation, but it's interesting perhaps to know for the audience how these two tools work side by side. Do you, how does it work to create coherence in all this?
Yes. Yeah, and as you say, Maya, they're often referred to as regulatory cousins. I've also had them referred to as regulatory sisters, which I quite liked. So, not twins, but, close family. And look, they're fundamentally the regulatory architecture of the Online Safety Act and the Digital Services Act are one and the same. So they're all about platforms taking responsibility for the choices that they're making in how they're designing those platforms. And the concerns of both the UK and the EU and the Commission are the same, which is how do we make the online experience safer for individuals and for societies. The platforms that we're regulating are also the same. So the VLOPs in the DSA, on the OSA side, we call them Category 1 services, but they're essentially the same platforms. And that's also reflected in both of our investigation and enforcement work. So the Commission and Ofcom have both taken action against a number of platforms for, frankly, broadly very similar issues. Similarly, the regulatory priorities for Ofcom and for the Commission are also the same. So, unsurprisingly, for this conference, protecting children is really at the forefront of both of our work. So we actually entered into an administrative agreement with the European Commission a couple of years ago, which has allowed us to have many really fruitful exchanges on the topic. And we also have a trilateral agreement between Ofcom, the Commission, and the E-Safety Commissioner, who we heard from earlier, where again, it's just allowed us to have a number of really open and very useful exchanges about things like what do highly effective age assurance measures actually look like on adult platforms. So from our perspective, I would say they're working very well together. Ultimately, they're about working with countries with shared values and who have shared objectives. And again, as we heard earlier, pulling together, we're stronger together.
Absolutely. Good and reassuring to know. So we have talked about the bans, we talked about jurisdiction. Now let's look a bit into the future. Artificial intelligence is there, it's come to stay, and it makes the conversation even more complex. So it's if we look a little bit at the dark side of it, minors can create deepfakes, they can be exposed to deepfakes. And I wanted to see, maybe with you, Niels, start with you. What are your tools at disposal to tackle this? It must be very, very difficult.
Yeah, no, it's a really important question, Maya, and as you say, it's here to stay, artificial intelligence, and everyone is using it from certain ages up as well. Important to say that when you speak to regulators and policymakers also more generally, there's a lot of fear about AI, particularly around AI regulation. Something that Jeremy, our executive chairperson, likes to talk about quite often is that Commissioner Mann, when it came to kind of regulating AI, we actually embraced it. You know, this is something we are regulating a lot of platforms already. So we are very keen to regulate AI. We know that it can be used for good, but it also has very negative consequences, and that's why we're keen to regulate it, and something that we have been doing already and will continue to do so as part of the AI Act. Now, of course, the AI Act is just, which is being implemented as we speak. That's just an extra layer when it comes to AI regulation. We know that the likes of Grok is under investigation both nationally, but from our Data Protection Commission, but also by our colleagues in the European Commission as well. So as I said, it's an AI service, an AI service that's already being regulated. We have a lot of tools, and of course they vary depending on the risk level. One that I'll mention, and it's one that we very much welcomed in the recent AI Omnibus, was an addition to Article 75, which defines the roles of market surveillance authorities like ourselves in regards to AI regulation, and that specifies how we work with the European Commission in terms of investigations. Of course, the Commission is responsible for leading investigations, but this specifies more clearly how we would work together on investigations, and crucially, it includes something where we as national regulators in certain situations can also make a formal request to our colleagues in the Commission to initiate an investigation. We know national regulators, we have on certain issues, we have cultural awareness or greater national expertise. The issues of deepfakes. There could be deepfakes that are targeting specific minorities or specific minorities in the country. It's important that we, as national regulators, have those tools to assist the Commission and, as I said, initiate investigations as needed. So that's one key tool that I'd like to recognise with it. But more broadly as well, we know that what's crucial to it, and I know we'll touch on in the next panel, is media literacy, which includes AI literacy. Everyone needs to know how to engage with these platforms, what's allowed, or with these services, what's allowed, what's not allowed. So kind of teaching teaching the youth and teaching everyone about how to engage with these platforms and how they should be appropriately used is a crucial tool that we know that we have to use.
Definitely. I wanted to circle back to the research, which was where we started. And if I'm not mistaken, the report that you've published on children's safety online experiences, you have found that over half of children 8 to 17 had already used AI. This is a quite massive number. And as Ofcom, how do you ensure that your regulatory activity is up to this challenge? I mean, these users are probably much more advanced to any of us here in the room. So how does this work?
Yes, no, it's interesting. So yeah, as you say, so it's 56% of 8 to 17-year-olds, but then it rises to 6% of 16 and 17-year-olds. And they tell us that they're using it for learning, for creativity, everyday tasks. Also, 1 in 10 telling us that they use it as a friend or as someone to talk to. I think it's also perhaps not reflecting usage and understanding, perhaps aren't quite correlating. So again, the survey told us that 4 in 10 of 8 to 17-year-olds told us that they trust AI that they're using either the same as or more than a person, as a human. Sharp intake of breath here. But I think the AI is a really good example of how actually it's our commitment to research that really helps ensure that our regulation is fit for purpose and able to adapt. So, these things are telling us, okay, feels like there's something that we need to be doing here and looking at when it comes to AI. So as an example, we're starting a project on trust in AI chatbots. So exploring things like how kind of different language shapes users' experiences and their trust in chatbots. And then also what that might mean for their media literacy skills, as Neil was talking about with the kind of AI literacy lens. So having that research and having that evidence means that it can then help us in terms of setting a direction for our policy work or our perhaps some media literacy interventions that we might want to look at, and ensure that our work is up to date rather than constantly trying to play catch up on some of these issues.
Indeed. And technological innovation can, of course, not be limited. It should rather be accompanied. So here comes my question to you, Inge. You work a lot with industry as government. How do you accompany this process? Does this cooperation help?
Well, I think we heard the word balance used already a few times. I think the challenge is to find the right balance between protection on the one hand and innovation, participation, and freedom of expression, but also right to information on the other hand. And industry indeed needs to be involved because they're the one implementing it in the end. So if you take them on board in an early stage, you can work together to find the right solution. And that's how Kijkwijzer also works with NICAM. All the stakeholders are involved in the process. They're involved in the organization and they're also responsible for doing the rating process. So I think industry needs to be involved, but also independent oversight by authorities because, well, also those stakeholders need to be oversight. We think that we really need to shift control from platforms determining what users see to users, especially young people, to make informed choices themselves. To focus on transparency, providing information upfront, empowerment rather than restriction. And of course, coming from the Netherlands, we also would like to have a scientifically grounded classification system.
Sounds like a good recipe. Well, we are approaching the end of the panel, but I wouldn't want to let you go before asking you about your one big challenge. What do you see as the big one when it comes to securing this balance between safe and open environment? Nils, you want to start?
Yeah, it's nothing new because it's been touched on already, so apologies for not much uniqueness here. But
30 seconds.
Yeah, sorry. Chatbots. You know, everyone is using them, including kids, as Rowena said, including a lot for emotional support. I think it's crucial that we start talking about these, you know, just because they might not be classified as high risk, particularly those that are being used for mental health or counselling services. That's something that we're very conscious of that kids are using for, particularly because the kids that are using them, the data shows, are kids from more either from minority or from more socio-economically deprived backgrounds. So kind of crucially ensuring that the guardrails are in place and that literacy is there to counter that, I think is important.
You're challenging it?
I think it will be commercial incentives that may conflict with safer internet.
Indeed, tricky one, that one. And Rowena, your challenge?
Yeah, I was going to say very similar. So the business models. So we saw that from the video at the start, right? As long as the platforms are designed in a way that is about adults engaging with content and staying on platforms, there's going to be a tension there that's going with keeping.
Indeed. So, well, with this, I would like to thank our three panelists, Inge Velbergen, Nils Fischer-Kerain, and Rina Burke, for their participation in this discussion. I think it's clear collaboration is key, but also follow innovation closely without hindering it and trying to find this balance. So while you now can relax a little bit and you can leave the stage, I would like to call up to stage Anna Herold. She's Head of Unit Audiovisual and Media Services Policy at DG Connect European Commission for a conversation with Mari Velsen, our Director General at the Norwegian Media Regulator, for a fireside chat.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you, Anna, for being here and coming to Norway to be with us today. And let's start with this panel conversation that we just had here. When hearing the reflections from these three in the panel, what's your reflections on this?
Yes, no, it's been a very interesting. Thank you all to all the panelists and to Maya for her expert moderation and really getting the most of our experts here. I think that I would say three takeaways from this very rich, albeit relatively short discussion. First, I would maybe take as a starting point what Niels said and presented as alternatives. No, I think you were talking about, if I'm not mistaken, 3 alternatives. Whether we need to implement the social media delay, whether we need to better enforce the current regulations, or whether we also need to strengthen the current regulations, if I understood you correctly. And I would say my takeaway here is that probably on something so important as the mental, physical, and also moral development of minors. No, this is how we have been calling, the risks to minors in the kind of old-fashioned way. But I think it's still, is actually what it is. No, why we're here, why we are talking about protection of minors. It's just that the way to attack these developments are changing. We really need a comprehensive approach, and probably we don't need alternatives, but we need to do all 3 things at the same time. It is where we are. We have come to some sort of point of no return, where we are realizing, despite all the efforts of media regulators for many years, that Maya has been describing, and despite all the actions also on media literacy, on trying to educate our young audiences, that we have come to a point where all 3 probably need to be there. So yes, so the need for holistic approach is my first takeaway. And then I have 2 smaller but important ones. One is the need for cooperation. You've been very clear about this, at all levels. And in a way, on the point that you were, I think, both Inge and Rowena making, which is a very valid point, and also one that the President von der Leyen made when she recently spoke again on protection of minors, I think in Copenhagen, is that if you want to change this logic, this business model, this kind of the way that actually social media work, is that you need, as also Julie in this great video that you were able to show us, said we need an approach that is implemented across the board, everywhere, because it's only by having a common front globally, I would say, that we will be able to really attack the very business model and have a change there. And the third small point, but a very important one, also raised, I think, by many, in particular Niels, is the need for being always future-proof, and on the lookout on the new things. What is the new? And design our regulation in a way that is able to catch immediately the new hype. Now is what you have been saying. It's about the AI assistants, the chatbots, especially also as companions. As Julie was explaining, they have designed the regulation that already, had them in mind. We were able to show the Commission and also regulators at national level that we can capture this new phenomena by the current rules as well. And I think this is the way we need the legislation going forward. Always future-proof and always on the lookout for the new challenges and how we can approach them.
So let's talk a little bit about what's happening in the EU system at the moment. And can you tell us a little bit about what we can expect from the panel of child safety online as to the forthcoming recommendations?
Yes, thank you. So this is going back, as probably most in this room know, already to last year's State of the Union speech of our president, where she announced indeed that she would like to do more. That despite the achievements and despite the legislation that we have in place, she's looking for new solutions. And she's been relatively open already about, first emerging conclusions of the panel. Of course, they are not there yet. They will be published only in July. The panel has already met 3 times and will be meeting soon another time, and actually now ready to start discussing the actual recommendations. But what is very clear, and the President has already confirmed that in that speech that I was referring to in Copenhagen, is that she is she is seriously considering a social media delay, as she calls it. And also, as she calls it and as she sees it, it's interesting that there is a meeting of the minds with the e-safety commissioner, because she is seeing this as limiting the access of the social media to the children and their minds. So it's interesting, but it's clearly and what also has been shown by Sophie in her presentation. There is obviously also a very mundane element of fragmentation that is of course unacceptable in such a sensitive area across the EU. So there will be a social media delay. Of course the details are still in the making. What does it mean exactly? I cannot tell you, but there will be. Another thing that there will surely be, and she's been also very outspoken about that, and we already have a recommendation in place, is also to have solutions then to make that happen. So the age verification, it's the app, the technical ways of making it work in practice. And where I cannot say for sure, but where I think there will also be something is a bit coming back to the point that we have been discussing following Neil's point on the different alternatives. These things have to go hand in hand. On the one hand, you might have a social media delay, but you will have to continue regulating what happens to children when they are online, because we want them also online. No, it's not that, like you were saying,
it's balance.
So it's precisely the balance. So there will probably be more measures on safety by design, on trying to regulate even better the experience of minors when they can legitimately be online.
And then we also have the AVMSD review coming up. So can you also tell us a little bit about what to expect there when it comes to protection of minors online?
Yes. So our old good AVMSD, which is,
which
and I'm so grateful to Maya that she's been promoting it, so forcefully. We're sometimes forgotten, we're the kind of old and forgotten kid on the block, but it's still there. It's the only piece of content regulation that we have in Europe. So I think we have to cherish that, and I think we have to update it in two respects, and both again were already mentioned today. One is, probably we have to think even better which categories of content we want to protect children from. And this is the value added. Our Irish friends has shown us the way with the online safety code, with clearly declaring certain categories of content unacceptable. Instigation to self-harm, suicide, cyberbullying, promoting eating disorders. I mean, these are things that have no place online and should be restricted by terms and conditions. So I can certainly tell you that we are considering defining this concept of what is harmful to minors a bit better. And a second thing, again, something that Inga rightly insisted a lot, the fact that social media are so popular with young audiences is mainly due to the popularity of influencers. Let's face it, we all know, and this is the hype, and this is where the young audiences are. And this is why we have to regulate them better in a more harmonized way. Inga was giving good examples as how it can be achieved, but it has to be achieved together, because of course this is an ecosystem. So content creators, influencers have to be regulated better. Especially for the advertising content, for the advertising standards we have in the AVMSD have to be effectively applied to them. Considering that it's been quite striking for me to learn that I think there is a Danish research showing that half of the content that young audiences consume on social media is advertising. I mean, it's shocking, It's shocking. I mean, it's really amazing. So this is very important, but we also have to look at the role of the platforms. Like Inga was saying, yes, it's good that the influencer is subject to certain obligations, but then we need the platform collaborating. And to give you and finish with that an example, this is an ecosystem which is of course about monetization, making money, but then we have to also make sure that maybe the money flow is interrupted if there are influencers, if there are bad malicious actors that constantly go against the rule, and the platforms have the power to do that, no, because it's them having this monetization agreement. So we are considering additional rules also for the platforms as regards these monetization possibilities for bad actors online, mostly influencers.
And then the last question, how to ensure that it will be a good alignment between DSA and AVMSD in these matters? Because that could be an challenge as well.
Yeah, there I think I would come back to the point that I think you have been all showing and making, like, you know, with your presence and with your daily work, which is, it's all about making sure that the enforcement is basically coordinated and that it's very clear who is the enforcer, for which actor, who takes precedence, if both, you know, can act, then it's clear, you know, that if one starts acting, then the other, of course, refrains from duplicating the work of its colleague. And I think we have good rules. So for me, it's really about now finding an even better enforcement structure, and maybe leaning also a little bit more on the DSA enforcement structure, also as regards the regulation of content, because, you know, this is the kind of last, although we do have, like Rowena was explaining, you know, we have administrative agreements with regulators outside, but we also internally, media regulators are cooperating with the Commission and the DSCs, but probably there we need an even better, more performing and more united enforcement structure. To make sure that nobody can then claim, you know, actually I'm regulated here by somebody else and you should not be regulating me. No?
And probably cooperation also will be even more important for the time to come.
Indeed.
So thank you very much, Anna Harold, for being with us. And before giving her an applause, I would just like to announce that we now will have a coffee break for those of us being here in Oslo. So we will be back here at 4:25. So please be back here at 4:25, and there will be coffee in the hallway. So thank you so far, and an applause, and thank you to Anna.
Thank you, Mari. Thank you for having me. Thanks.
Welcome back, everyone. We truly hope you enjoyed your coffee. Also, welcome back to all of you following us online. My name is Stian Barsnes Simonsen, and I'm head of communication at the Norwegian Media Authority. And at this session, we will explore how minors, families, and educators can be empowered to navigate the digital world more safely. In being in Norway, we will focus on the Nordic countries, their media literacy initiatives and experiences, and how youth perspectives can be included in this important work. The 5 Nordic countries recently conducted a joint survey on media literacy for the first time. And Martin Karlsson, a research officer at the Swedish Agency of the Media, will represent the main findings concerning children and young people. The stage is yours, Martin.
All right. See here. Move ahead. My slides. And yes, thank you very much. And it's a lovely opportunity for me to be here for you to present for you today some of the key findings from this survey and tell you a bit more about it. And for those of you who don't know about it, I can tell you that it's available to download at the web page of the Nordic Council of Ministers, who also were responsible for the funding of this survey. And in our project organizations, we had representation from Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, and Iceland in the steering committee. And we also had all these 5 countries contributing with expertise and advice as we drafted the questionnaire for this survey. So I'll start off by saying, or giving you a context to the survey, what types of questions and how the population looked like and so on. And then I'll move on to present some of the key findings from the child survey, that is. So if we start with the questionnaire, you can see here that it's a questionnaire containing several types of questions. We have like a regular question about media habits, how often, and so on. People use different kinds of media. We also have questions about attitudes towards media, what they feel and believe in terms of quality and so on. And in addition to that, we also have media literacy tests. For instance, we're asking respondents to distinguish between editorial content and advertising on a newspaper webpage, for instance, and see if they're able to do that. As for the population that we surveyed in this survey, we targeted the adult population, as I said, in Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Finland, and Iceland. And in total, that amounted to a sample of 9,487 respondents. And there we targeted people from 16 years of age and upwards. And we also surveyed children between the ages of 9 up until 15 years. And there, the total sample amounted to 3,257 respondents. But here we only surveyed Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Iceland for this time at least. And as for the data collection, it was a company called Origo Group who were responsible for the data collection. And first we did a pilot study in December 2024, which lasted until January the following year. And then we did a baseline study later on that spring, starting in February and went on until April. And since the pilot study we didn't really find any problems with the questionnaire after the pilot study. So what we did was to include the respondents from the pilot study into the sample of the baseline study as well. So results are based on both of these data collections. And as I said, we had funding from the Nordic Council of Ministers. So what I prepare now is a selection of findings that I believe can be relevant for today's topic. We have several different questions, and as I said, you should really take the opportunity to read it in its entirety. You may find stuff there that I'm not talking about today, but that can still be relevant. So please do so at the Nordic Council of Ministers webpage. But I'll start off by telling you a bit about young people's social media habits in Sweden, Norway, Denmark, and Iceland. And I should also remind you here that what we're looking at now is mainly differences between countries. We also, of course, have data about gender differences and age differences, but just since we have so limited amount of time now, I'll focus on the main differences between countries. And what's important to note here then is that among these different social media platforms, the most frequently used platform is YouTube, where a majority of children in at least Denmark, Norway, and Sweden use it on a daily basis. In Iceland, there are not as many, but still quite many. And the second most used platform is Snapchat, and the third most is TikTok. And if we compare the countries, we can see overall that Swedish children seems to be the most frequent users of all these platforms. And that's in spite of the fact that we commenced the pilot study in December 2024, and that was 2 months after the Swedish authorities had announced the screen time regulations. But please note here that we ask for the daily usage, so we don't ask how many hours a day they use it, but it's still an interesting case in point here. And Icelandic children seem to be using these platforms slightly less frequently than compared to their Nordic peers. Moving on, we also ask questions about young people's news media habits and from which different kind of outlets they receive their news. And perhaps not so surprisingly, the most frequently used outlet for news is social media in all 4 countries. And the second most frequently used platform then is television. And what we also do here, as I mentioned, is to ask about their attitudes. And among the different set of questions we ask is to what extent they value the quality of news in different news outlets. And these tables are perhaps not perfectly clear to you, but here we have a set of questions where we ask children to evaluate the quality of news in different media outlets. And what is clear here is that although the most frequently used platform for news is social media, they still value the quality of news in television more. And that, I think, is an interesting case in point here that we can take with us, because there seem to be, well, it indicates sort of a critical awareness, at least, that there is a difference between where and how news is published and where it comes from. That people seem to be reflecting about, and it's especially children. In addition to that, I'd also like to bring up another set of questions that we ask, and these questions have to do with young people's own responsibility when it comes to spending time online and what they do online. And here it's fairly clear that a majority of children in all Nordic countries have a strong sense of responsibility for what they do online. They do feel they have a strong responsibility when it comes for what they can post online, and that it's important to ask for permission before you tag family or friends before posting online. It's also important that what you post actually follows rules and regulations online, which is another question we ask. And many also feel that it's important to use the comment section to challenge bait or when other users attack others, to stand up for those that are victimized online, which is another thing that sort of indicates that there seems to be a strong sense of responsibility among children. What we also do here is to ask what they do when they, for instance, use social media. We ask them to what extent they post on social media themselves, to what extent they comment on social media posts, as well as to what extent they skip commenting on social media posts for fear of being attacked, and how often they send emails. And what is clear here is that although most children use at least one platform on a daily basis, very few use it actively on a daily basis for commenting or posting posts themselves, which also tells something about how that use actually looks like and what they actually do when they spend time online. Lastly here, I want to show you a slide which illustrates children's attitudes toward their own abilities to interpret and understand what they see online. And this includes, for instance, questions concerning, do you think it's difficult to stay up to date with the news? Do you think it's difficult to determine which media you can trust? Is it hard to tell whether you can trust online search results, or is it difficult to determine who is behind a social media account profile? And what you can see here is that many, at least a majority, agrees with almost all of these statements in all countries, which seems to indicate that, yes, while many social media feeds are compelling for our children, many are still pretty open with the fact that they can be hard to interpret and understand, which is something I'll get back to. So I'd like to finish off with just a few preliminary conclusions based on these findings that I think we can take with us in the coming discussion. First of all, I think it's clear that in all of these countries, children seem to have at least some sort of critical awareness when it comes to, for instance, distinguishing news and where it comes from and evaluating its credibility and quality. So I don't think we should think of them as completely unaware of these things. Another thing which I find interesting is that, again, they seem to be having a strong sense of responsibility and a sense of duty when it comes to what they do online, and that it's important to take responsibility for what you do online, and that was clear in all countries. In addition to that, as for the participation in our digital public sphere, we do see that children spend a lot of time online and on social media, but very few of them frequently use it for expressing themselves, which is another sort of gap here, which is good to have in mind. And finally, coming back to the last slide I showed you, it seems to they seem to be pretty open about the fact that it can be hard to understand what they see. And that was clear in all of these 4 countries, that although it is very compelling to come back to social media feeds and spend time there, it can be difficult to distinguish what's what and who's who when you go through your social media feed. And the question here is, of course, is that an indication of a lack of media literacy among children? Or is it an indication of lack of clarity in social media feeds and how we should interpret them? And that's hopefully something we can come back to. So that said, I'll stop there, and thank you for your time and the opportunity for me to presenting this to you. And again, the full survey is available online at the Nordic Council of Ministries webpage. So please download it, read it, and get back to me if you have any questions.
Thank you so much, Martin. Then we will move back to Norway and a recent report produced by the Norwegian Media Authority named Trapped in the Feed. The report addresses how design and functions on social medias and on digital services affect the user habits of children and young people, and what risks that represents. So please welcome Head of the Department of Media Literacy at the Norwegian Media Authority and my good colleague, Maria Grande.
Thank you. Okay. So are we trapped in the feed on apps like Snapchat and TikTok? New research from the Norwegian Media Authority strongly suggests that many young Norwegians experience that social media have this effect in their lives. These services are designed to hook us, keep us engaged, and make sure that we are coming back. Good afternoon. I am Maria Grande, head of the Norwegian Media Authority's Department for Media Literacy. I will share some perspectives on how design affects social media behavior among young Norwegians. So, although most of the social media services have an age limit of 13, more than half of 9 and 10-year-olds in Norway are using social media. Among the 11 and 12-year-olds, the figure is 74%. Although this is quite a high number, it is slightly lower than when we conducted this study 2 years ago. We do not know exactly why this is, but there has been quite a lot of attention paid to harmful effects of social media lately, and the Norwegian government is working on a bill that will raise the age limits for social media. So this is probably part of the story. As many as 8 out of 10 9 to 12-year-olds in Norway use Roblox, which is an online gaming platform. And this is quite an increase. Oh, sorry, I skipped a note. I'm sorry. I'll go back. Okay. 21% of the Norwegian 9 to 12-year-olds use TikTok and 30% use Snapchat. And as you can see, this represents a slight decline from 2024. However, at the same time, we see that many of the youngest users are turning to online gaming platforms like Roblox and to the messaging apps like WhatsApp and Messenger instead. These apps have many of the same harmful design features as the more traditional social media apps. Then we move on to this. As many as 8 out of 10 9 to 12-year-olds in Norway use Roblox, which is an online gaming platform. This is quite an increase since our last survey 2 years ago, as you can see. You might assume that Roblox is a safer place than the traditional social media platforms like Snapchat and TikTok, but we see that the online gaming platforms have introduced many of the same features as the social media services. They are designed to keep users engaged and coming back. For example, Roblox constantly suggests new games in its Discover feed, and it is making it easy to keep clicking without taking breaks. Many games also offer daily rewards and limited time events, encouraging the users to log in frequently. There is also a significant contact risk on this platform. As part of a research, the Norwegian Media Authority for the first time has gained access to feeds from Snapchat and TikTok, and also YouTube, but the findings here are from Snapchat and TikTok. It's from a number of teenagers between 13 and 16 years old. And what we found is, in our view, alarming. One finding from our Norwegian activity data from the feeds was that our youngsters go through an enormous amount of videos every day. The most usual amount of videos was 200 to 400 videos per day. But we had also super users in our material that saw on average 1,500 videos every day. For most, the video consumption happens in many short sessions. In my view, our most alarming finding is connected to the many interruptions during the day. In our material, the most usual pattern was to check on TikTok every 8 to 12 minutes. So that's the mean screen return time. So we also discussed these findings from the activity data with the target group using focusing groups. A 14-year-old girl said this: "When I'm more excited to go home and scroll on TikTok than to do anything else, it makes me think that it might be a bit too much." And a quote from a 14-year-old boy: "I often think that I only spend a few minutes, but suddenly more time has passed than I intended. One video leads to the next, and because they're entertaining, and before I know it, an hour has gone by." Our findings show that many young people feel that it is too much. 38% of 9 to 18-year-olds in our survey say that they would like to spend less time on social media, but it's not easy. As a 14-year-old girl put it, there can be some pressure if you're the only one in your class or friend group who doesn't have a certain app. It can make you feel left out. From the activity we observed in the social media feeds, we see that young people are online throughout the entire day, even late at night. Some tell us that their screen use affects their sleep. Nearly 1 out of 3 say that they don't get enough sleep due to social media. It's not surprising you're chatting in the evenings because a whole day has passed, and by then you have lots to talk about, said a 15-year-old girl. "I haven't felt that my sleep itself is worse, but I go to bed later because I end up staying on my phone. My sleep schedule is a bit messed up," said a 14-year-old girl that we talked to. And as many as mentioned earlier, that social media is also an important space for children and young people to socialize. But the flip side of this is that many have a constant fear of missing out. Those we spoke to in our focus groups said that it can be a bit unsettling not being online often enough, because they might miss out on things or lose track of what their friends are doing. This also makes it harder to log off, and it creates the pressure to stay connected. A 14-year-old boy put it this way: I send a lot of snaps in the evening because of streaks, and when I wake up, I often have 50 or 60 replies waiting for me. And a 15-year-old girl said whenever there's a break or you're waiting for something, the first thing you do is to pick up your phone. I feel like I'm addicted to it. So what do we see as the key points in this research? First, the main problem is not that young people lack self-control or that parents are not doing enough to protect them. The biggest challenge is that the apps that young ones are using are deliberately designed to trap you and keep you hooked. These design features and functions make it harder to control your use and can contribute to a sense of addiction. We therefore believe that the large companies behind the social media should face stricter requirements and take greater responsibility to ensure that children and young people are safe when using their services. The Digital Services Act will hopefully play a key role here. These days, several countries are discussing raising the age limit on social media. So is Norway. The government plans to submit a new bill to Parliament during this year, suggesting that the age limit on social media will apply from January 1st, the year in which a person turns 16. One discussion going on in Norway right now is how social media should be defined when age limits are set. From the Norwegian Media Authority's point of view, this should not be about whether a service traditional is classified as a social media. What needs to be considered is which features, design elements, and contents might be harmful to children and young people. A third point is that age limits probably will have limited effect if they are not followed by effective age verification tools. Last but not least, I would like to underline that we need a broad set of measures, including media literacy initiatives, that will be covered in the panel discussions coming out. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Without anyone noticing, I will add another table to the floor, because now we'll soon have another panel. And before I'm introducing them, we're just going to check one video.
Man blir jo liksom fanget I skjermen på en måte. Alt for mye, det stresser meg og gjør meg veldig sliten. Jeg alt for mye på TikTok. Jeg kan for eksempel ha sånn skjermtidkontroll. Lage meg litt mobilfrie zoner, for eksempel ikke mobil I middagsbordet, ikke mobil på badet. Jeg har ryddet rommet sånn veldig grundig sånn flere ganger bare for å ikke se på skjerm. Man finner på litt mer å gjøre på fritiden, I stedet for å bare se på telefonen.
To have representatives from 4 of our 5 Nordic countries here today. And let me introduce our panel. You already met Martin Karlsson, Research Officer at the Swedish Agency for the Media. Please welcome on stage. Welcome also to Skuli Bragi Geirdal, Head of Icelandic Safer Internet Center at the Icelandic Media Commission. Please come to the panel. And also Laura Mäkelä is Senior Ministerial Advisor representing the Finnish Ministry of Education and Culture. And last, welcome to my colleague and boss, Mari Velsan, Director General at the Norwegian Media Authority.
So we better behave today.
Yes, I'll do my very best. I'll do my very best. So first of all, a question to all of you. From the knowledge we gained from the Nordic survey and also other international surveys and research you might have, what do you consider the biggest challenge in your country right now comes to the children's safety and digital space? We can start with you, Martin.
Okay, thank you. Well, of course, there are a lot of things on our agenda, and it's many things to think about. But one thing we spend a lot of time grappling with is, of course, that in the Nordic Media Literacy Survey, but also especially in our own national surveys that we do about media habits among children, we can identify that there are especially vulnerable groups that seem to be more exposed to online harm and that have low levels of mental well-being compared to other children. I'm speaking especially about teenage girls and children with mental disabilities. So one of our efforts is, of course, to make sure that what we do actually reach all children, and that we also have materials and initiatives that we can aim especially at particular groups of children to make sure that they get the help they need and that we get to see them. So that is one thing. But what's also important to us is, of course, to create and sustain stable structure so we can have an ongoing dialogue with children as we go about to plan our business and develop methods and so on. And so to make sure that we have them on board and have their views represented in what we do.
And Scully, in Iceland, what is your biggest challenges on this field?
Definitely, right now it's the AI literacy that is the most emerging thing that we need to put focus on in media literacy initiatives. What the teachers and the teenagers are asking us is also education about things like the manosphere, it's rage baits, it's these addictive features and what they can do themselves to affect this environment. They also want us to look towards the future. How do we keep the internet safe for the future? They think we are moving very slowly when it comes to regulation and updating materials. But I think
do you disagree?
No, I really agree with them. Strongly agree with them. When looking at the Nordic Media Literacy Survey, I think it's very important that we stay very cautious of comparing data because although we share similarities, there are a lot of differences as well. And it has been a very daunting task for small Iceland to be constantly compared to the data from the other Nordics because we have a lack of resources when it comes to implementing media literacies. But we also have great strength when it comes to small populations. So we've been working with that and we've seen a lot of great changes in the data we collect back home in Iceland.
Yeah. And Laura, what do you consider your greatest challenges in Finland?
Thank you and good afternoon. We actually conducted a survey now this spring to young people exactly about social media and what they think that the state should do, how could we help them, and if there are some problems that we should solve. And we got 60,000 answers. So the survey was conducted through schools. So all the pupils were kind of forced to answer. but it was really striking. Actually, this whole survey and the research I will tell later, it was published today afternoon at the same time I'm here. But the biggest concern for these 60,000 young people, they were saying over 50% of them said that they are worried about becoming a victim of sexual violence, and followed by the risk of being bullied and finally experiencing harassment. So these are the concrete answers from our 60,000 young people. And of course, this is the challenge, that how do we help them to keep themselves safe? And this is, of course, what we are trying to do.
And then, Mari, in Norway, what do you consider are the greatest challenges here? Oh,
we
can't
can't
turn
hear
on
you.
The microphone.
Here we are. I think the biggest challenge for all of us is to keep track of the challenges. So then doing continuously research is very important. And what we have been doing now the latest months in Norway, I think it's very exciting because we have gone from only asking children, and then we all know that it's easy to not always tell the truth, but to give the answer you think that's expected from you. So then, as my colleague Maria was telling about earlier today, looking into the actual feed, what are they exposed to, what are they watching, and then see how the, for example, the design and functions, what it means for the user habits. I think that's been really interesting. So we will go on doing that, now also looking into the content. So I think that is very important. Also, we are a bit worried when it comes to young people and their news consumption, because what they tell us in our research is that they hardly themselves actively search for news. They consume whatever is coming up in their feed. And that actually means that the platforms decides not only what they're being exposed to, but also what they're not being exposed to. And what this means for taking part in the democracy, I think is a big worry.
The first panel today addressed regulatory initiatives. In Sweden, it's recently proposed to introduce a new law containing an age limit to access to social media. The same in Norway. The Norwegian government wants to do the same. And how do you see these initiatives? We can start again with you, Mari.
Well, from the Norwegian Media Authority's point of view, we support the government's initiative. Our research clearly shows that children are being exposed to harmful design and harmful content, and we need something more than media literacy. Media literacy is an education, of course, is important, but we also need a stronger regulation of the platforms. So I think that is a way that we need to go. But I would like to very short stress two things. First, we think it's important that when we define which services that should fall under the age limit, we cannot only look into what has traditionally been defined or classified as social media. We need to look into which services do have design functions content that might be harmful, to make this balance when it comes to right to participation in information and right to protection.
So digital services more than social media, in a way?
Yeah, we need to look into the services and then look into what can be harmful. So I think that's an important point here. And then a law is only as good as its enforcement. And because of that, we also need an effective age verification. That's not just a technical detail. It is the mechanism that determines whether the age limit is real or only symbolic, I think.
And Martin, Sweden is in the same process. What are your perspective on this initiative?
Well, I think we've heard a lot of insightful and nuanced responses to the propositions, and as well as how the situation has developed in Australia. And I think from our perspective, it is certainly a difficult decision, but it's understandable. Well, it's not a decision yet, it's a proposal. At least in the short term, we think it's important to think of it, as we heard earlier today, as one of several tools we use in the process of trying to create a better internet for kids. And it's also important, I think, to follow up the outcome of that proposal, should it actually be decided then and implemented. And what we also feel is, again, stressing this holistic strategy in this work. It's also important that we not lead such a decision to accept the dangers in the online environment. So as to say, we just delay people entering into that dark world. So we cannot stop trying to make internet a better place, although we may have age restrictions. So as long as we think of it as part of a holistic strategy, I think it can be useful, I guess.
Do you have similar discussions in Finland and Iceland? We start with Finland, Scully. No, sorry, Iceland, Scully.
Yes, this is an ongoing discussion, and I can add that to the slide in the presentation we earlier saw. This has been proposed in the Parliament, and we have a working group within the Ministry of Children Education. It's a priority, and they will propose their proposal now in this month for consultation. What we emphasize on is the factors of access to harmful content, of course the data protection, it is the access to children online, but the main focus is of course safety by design and these harmful design features, because we worry a little bit about that we are putting a narrow focus on the subject. It used to be discussion around smartphones in schools, and then it was screen time, and now social media. We need to look at it from a much broader perspective. And if we look at the harmful design features, we also have them present in the gaming platforms. We have them with the chatbots and AI companions. So let's make this discussion about more than social media platforms.
And we have to ask you as well, Laura, how's the discussion going in Finland?
Well, the discussion has been very heated during the whole spring, and we also have an interministerial working group that has been working on it, and it was actually the midterm report of that working group that was published now this afternoon, and this survey for young people was included in this work. And our discussion has been very much along the lines that Niels was presenting this morning, so that similar questions and what kind of legislation if and should we combine. And of course we are really looking forward to the proposal from the Commission, and so the working group will actually continue its work after the summer break.
And then another open question to all of you. How, it's been mentioned a couple of times earlier today, and it's an important question. How do you see the challenge balancing the concern of freedom of expression and the right to information and participation versus the need of protection and privacy?
Yeah,
you just raise your hand.
But yes, I think it taps into some of the things we talked about earlier as well. Of course, it is difficult, but it's also necessary to find a balance. We need to do both things. But what we try to do, of course, is to include children in the process, to make sure that when we make decisions that restrict their rights, we at least have to include them and hear what they say and try to see it from their perspective as well. So that is a minimum, I think, in when we're trying to find a balance between doing these two things. And that's something we try to do a lot in our work and make sure that we have, if not always, their understanding, but at least their perspective, so we know that.
And I'll come back to that, but Scully as well.
Yes, because I think it's important if we only look at the research, we always just what we emphasize in what we're doing, we like to research that, and what we see in the research, we like to emphasize on that. What we need is this ongoing discussion, and we are very lucky with a small population in Iceland that we are able to visit schools all around the country to have this discussion with them. And one thing I think is very important to mention is that yes, enforcement is very important, but we have already this 13-year-old limit on social media, and we have, with a 2-year time frame, with awareness and education, been able to drop the percentage of children 9 to 12-year-olds on TikTok and Snapchat more than half in only 2 years' time. So just with media literacy, awareness and education, we can work with the age limits that we already have. So I think this holistic approach that we've been talking about is very important, but then I like to address that regulators often talk about media literacy and the importance of it, but oftentimes it lacks the resources and funding to meet the potential that it really can have on the society. So it's not a soft topic.
No, so these results are actually come through direct communication with the kids themselves. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, we go around the country. We do the educational programs. Me, myself, I talk to and work with around 10,000 children each year with media literacy directly from the age of 6-year-olds. So we are able to see a lot of positive things in our research. But what I'm worried about is that what we're not measuring is the kind of the blind spots. But one thing to spot what we're not seeing in research is directly talking to them, because they're very willing to say how they get past parental controls if you just ask them, they're willing to tell you.
Yeah, and that is partly the answer of my next question is, because we always talk about this, but in which ways can we actually involve children and young people to make sure that their voices are heard? And we can say it is important, but how do we do it? In Iceland, you're actually visiting the school and you talk to them physically, analogs, analogy. But what about Finland? How do you ensure that children's voices are heard in this process?
I want to highlight also the work that the Safer Internet Centers are doing, because we also have I think all the EU countries have Safer Internet Centers, and we have had it for 15 years, and it's really important what you do. And also all the other support mechanisms, this helpline and these hotlines. But then I would like to tell about the Finnish framework for digital competence. It was a really big effort for our ministry. We did it during the 2020 and 2033, and it's a kind of it's a competence descriptions for media literacy skills made for different children of different age, meaning that there is it's a kind of a support for the implementation of national core curricula, and it defines that what children of 10 years old should be able to understand about these media, and then what they should be able to understand when they are 12. And we really have put these criteria to all the schools. And we have 80% of our municipalities are actually using this criteria or these competence descriptions, and the schools are really working with them in different subjects, whether it's language or mother tongue or whatever, but they have these. And it's been a kind of a success that we know we can describe what certain age has to understand. But now we have found a new challenge, which is that what are teachers supposed to be able to do? Because it's nice to have these descriptions for these kids, but then, and now we are actually working with the competence descriptions for teachers, so that they are then also able to teach. And this includes now this AI literacy and all these new phenomena, because this we are running behind all the time. So, and also I think teachers they know too that they are not able, so they want this help. And this is now the recent project that we are working on.
Mari?
Yes, in Norway we involve children and young people in all our research. So when we are doing big surveys, we test the questions, for example, to make sure that the children understand what we are asking about. So I remember once one of our questions was concerning social media, and then when we tested the questions, we found out that they actually don't use the wording social media. They talk about Snapchat or TikTok or whatever. So just small things to make sure that they understand what we're actually talking about, or if we lack questions that are really important to them. So this, I think, has given us new knowledge, and also we use qualitative research focus groups to dig more into things, and that is also helpful. And to also pick up your point, we are also very concerned about media literacy initiatives, not only when it comes to young people, but also professionals working with the children, because parents are important, but so is the professional network. So we need to build this knowledge in a big area, so to say.
Now all 4 countries are talking about getting some laws in order to put age limits on social medias. Social medias have been around for quite some time. Skåle, you said that the kids themselves think that it goes quite slowly from the government side. So how do you think, when technology and user habits are changing so fast, how can we prepare ourselves and the users for the next trend?
Yes, I could just add there because I think this question taps into the last question. One thing is, of course, to sustain a dialogue with children, and that's also something that we try to work systematically with, establishing sustainable relationships with civil society, for instance, youth organizations, as well as with schools, to make sure that we can come back and keep a dialogue going in the light of the fact that habits are changing and technology is changing. But then also, of course, to see that what we develop in terms of initiatives and so on also are able to target different groups, and that we see that what we do can be used and understood by different groups given their particular circumstances and so on. But I think it's also important that we continue building like a foundational solid knowledge of media and funding and financing and the business models and so on. So we sort of, in spite of the fact that things change and we get new apps and so on, the business models and the structures are not changing as fast, and that is a good thing to have in mind, or like a bedrock knowledge when you approach and navigate the media landscape. So I think it's important to do that as well.
And Laura?
I would just agree what you just said, that we always say that our approach has always been technological neutrality, actually. That you have to have critical media literacy skills no matter what is the platform, in a way that if you are not able, and actually what we are really worried about is the basic reading skills of young people, and that people don't read. And this is, you have to start from there. And the problem is that when young people are now, like we hear that they are like how many hours per day looking at these TikTok videos, so they don't have time to read. And not even as a parent, you try to force them to read, they certainly don't do it. So, and then if it starts from that they can't read, so it's really hard work from the beginning.
And I think it's also about building regulatory framework flexible enough to address new harms that might come, so that we don't need to fix the framework every time we will have a new service, for example, or a new kind of harm. And this is, of course, difficult, and I think regulation will always be behind development. But what we need to try to assure is that we are not too far behind, and that it's flexible enough to last for a while.
I think it's a good point. I mean, if you just look at how do we regulate other media, we don't ban children from watching television, but we restrict them from harmful content. We restrict the access of marketing and advertisement. If we look at the Kajkvæser, PEGI, how do we put age limits on content? We have the age categories of 14, 16 and 18-year-old. And the content that we see in video games, television, movies, episodes, it's also present on social media. So look at the regulation we already have. We can also put it towards the social media platforms. Of course, the problem is with user-generated content. That's what our main problem is. But with the design features, finding a solution of regulating that aspect, I think is a way to look forward. And I think one very important thing that we found in our research is that around 25% of children, they have a positive experience of social media. And almost all of them, when we talked to them, they said, I have a parent that told me how to stay safe, how to report content, what to do. So we need to empower parents as well. We have done this with a toolkit for the parents. They want to have this discussion with the parents first, then the teachers, and then comes the guy from the government. I'm in like 5th or 5th or 6th place. I like to be a little bit over, but let's put the emphasis also on empowering parents.
Now we have 4 of the 5 Nordic countries represented here today. How can we work better together?
I think we already have a very good cooperation. We know each other well. We have similar challenges, and our societies are quite similar as well. So, for example, the survey that we saw the results from earlier today, That's a good example, I think, and we are now discussing how we can repeat that in a few years to see how things are developing. We are also having regularly meetings, exchanging experiences and discussing how we can learn from each other. For example, we a few years ago ran a campaign, and then my Icelandic colleague called me and asked, "Can we use your material and translate it into our language?" And we said, "Of course." I also said that we borrowed part of this from our colleagues in Ireland. So I mean, we are cooperating not only in Scandinavia or in the Nordic countries. We are cooperating throughout Europe, and I think this is very important because we face the same challenges, and we cannot find the solutions in only one country.
And the final question to you all, in your view, what is the most important thing to do next to ensure a safer digital environment for our children?
Well, again, that's a big question, but going back to some of the things we've been talking about today, I think it's, of course, part to try to harmonize the different proposals and strategies that we have in place now. A lot has happened in recent time now with the DSA and the age limits and the screen time recommendations, and I think we need to take that all into account and see how we can work with it from a in a harmonic, holistic perspective, of course, and try to work on a long-term basis here. And I also think it's important, we cannot stress it enough, to keep the conversation going with children, to make sure that we keep up with what's changing and that we do it from their perspective. So we don't do too much based on what we think is happening. So maybe those two things for now, at least.
I think just listening to the children and teenagers, I mean, they are saying, you talk too much and you do too little. So, I mean, I think that we should put all of this expertise, research and knowledge here, combine the Nordic initiative and put it into action.
Yeah.
I would echo what you said, that we need this European level coherent action and work together. And in order to be able to build long-term systemic capacity of member states, so now it's easily so that we have these projects here and projects there, and we need this kind of common harmonization, or not harmonization but systemic cooperation.
Yeah, and Mari?
Yeah, I think it's important to realize that we need a set of different measures here, because it's not only one thing. We need several initiatives. So we need the regulation. We need the regulation on an EU basis, but also on a national level. We need media literacy initiatives, education. So we need to work broadly here, and also we really need cooperation. We need cooperation across country borders. We need cooperations also across sectors. Because these things are really going into each other. So I think that's my second point.
And on the Icelandic kids quote, let's do more and talk less. So thank you so much to Martin Karlsson, Skuli Bragi Gerdal, Laura Mekle and Mari Velsan. And I would love to invite Maya back on stage for you and Mari to wrap up this conference. Thank you very much.
So what really remains, I think, is a big thank you to our speakers, our panelists, our moderators, and of course to our audience, both you who have been with us here in Oslo and to our followers online. And I hope really that you all gained some new knowledge here today, both when it comes to enforcement and empowerment, because both are really important. And I'm also sure that the things we have been discussing here today, we have not been talking about for the last time. I think this is discussions that will continue in many areas also for the time to come, and also within the frames of the observatory, Maya.
Absolutely. This is not a topic that finishes here. And at the observatory, we are going to produce actually 2 reports in the second half of the year. We will use this conference as a good excuse to make a report on social media bans. What an original thing. But I think this is to take stock of the excellent exchanges that I think we had today. We had a great lineup of speakers, and we took plenty of notes, and this will be very, very helpful, hopefully also for policymakers to have everything in one place where we collect information and the state of play. And then we have another report programmed on empowerment, so that we will do in collaboration with the European Institute for Media Law in Saarbrücken, and it will discuss harm, scope, the different layers where minors are hit, targeted and used or abused. So more to come from the observatory. Stay tuned on our website. Thank you for coming, both offline and online. And thank you so much to you, Mari, and your team, everyone on stage, behind the stage, Katinka, Therese, Miriam for the observatory, moderators. It's been great working with you, and I hope you all enjoyed the conference.
Thank you.